here. Oh, I was looking for my St. Jude. I'm like, where's my St. Sorry, taking so long. It was right here. Well, thank you all so much for being here, and good morning once again. Just wanting to keep our weekly briefings on Wednesdays moving forward. On next Wednesday, I will be out of town with the African American Mayors Association, so I will not have a briefing on next Wednesday. However, we will be getting you just pertinent information and the like throughout the week. But as of today, and as I start always with my briefings, just touching on public safety. And as we look at the preliminary data from the New Orleans Police Department, the week of April 2nd through April 8th compared to the week prior, had fewer homicides, again, armed robberies, sexual assaults, and auto thefts than the previous week. Although, again, all of these matters continue to be a top priority for the city of New Orleans and for the New Orleans Police Department. Year to date, stats using, again, preliminary data from the New Orleans Police Department through April 8th, comparing to 23 to 22, show that total crimes against persons remain down 20%. Armed robberies down 27%, carjackings 55%, standing very steady and strong there. Homicides 16%. I wanted to also give you information relative to the search process for the superintendent of the New Orleans Police Department. That's something that you all asked me, and I have a little bit more meat, a little bit more information to share. And so next week, the International Association of Chiefs of Police is asking the community to provide input on police, on the entire search, I would say, what they're looking for and the like. So on Monday, April the 17th, 5:30 p.m., the Tremay Recreational Center. On Tuesday, April 18th, 5:30 p.m., Jesuit High School. On Wednesday, April 19th, we have two. One at 5:30 p.m. at 3014 Holiday Drive. You know, that's across the river. Again, April 19th at 7 p.m. at First Zion Baptist Church. Thursday, we'll have two once again, 4:30 p.m. at Noor Navra Library, and April 20th again at 6 p.m. at Suburban Baptist Church. Again, the community input is always beneficial. It adds value, and just leaning forward into what the community is looking for in the superintendent of the New Orleans Police Department. I welcome this participation, and of course appreciate the International Association of Chiefs of Police for working with the city of New Orleans in this endeavor. I also wanted to touch on briefly around blight remediation efforts. You know, it's so exciting to be at a point where we have resources to really go deeper and be more aggressive as it relates to blight throughout the city of New Orleans, and with a holistic approach, I would say. I want to say thank you to code enforcement and all of the city leadership relative to quality of life matters. It is a collaborative effort, and you know what? It takes a lot of hard work and coordination. There has been a significant progress with blight remediation, again, across the entire city, including the demolition and abandoned buildings that have become hot spots for criminal activity. So as of April the 10th, code enforcement has completed 39 demolitions this year alone. I wanted to touch base on a multi-unit abandoned apartment complex. What is that? What is that?
Live, you working at the broadcast.
Oh, okay.
He's on the phone with an engineer back at DSC.
Okay. Are we good? Can I go?
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. All right. So I wanted to touch base on Cindy's Place, 6800 Cindy Place in New Orleans East. This has been I'm telling you, in this community, one that has sucked the life out of, I would say, and definitely the quality of life out of this area and neighborhood. I believe about 3 years ago, one of our officers was shot and killed at this location while, again, attending to the needs of this community. The abandoned apartment complex, listed again as 6801 Cindy Place, has been demolished. This is a big win for New Orleans East and District E across the board, and just demonstrates our commitment to eradicating blight across the city, but absolutely with the focus and eye on New Orleans East with these massive apartment complex units. Also, at the recommendation of the Mayor's Office of Youth and Families, 6051 Hubel Street was also demolished, again achieving a major blight eradication win for this neighborhood. And a daycare center sits directly across from it. And again, due to hazards this property presented, we were able to utilize the strength of the Code Enforcement Department and laws on the books to demolish this property. I also just wanted to acknowledge the Quality of Life Walk that happened in Mid-City on last week. And just thanking again all of our partners, Code Enforcement, the New Orleans Health Department, Mosquito and Termite Control Board, Safety and Permits, the Office of Community Development, of course OPCD, 911, 311, NOPD, and our District Attorney, Jason Williams. And so we want to thank them for this collaborative effort. Again, just being present in the community, walking in Mid-City, and I know that it did mean a lot to the community. But this is a multifaceted approach that we will continue to move forward in our city. At this time, though, I'm going to turn to John, turn it to you for questions and answers.
All right, let's just go left to right, starting with deputy issue.
I have two questions, if you don't mind, and we'll start with the first one, Mayor. What is your response to the latest ruling in the consent decree, the judge ruling in your favor yesterday, and really what is your end game here as well?
Well, the end game is to have the DOJ as well as the judge focus on the consent decree relative to constitutional policing practices. That is the end goal, and it seems that that goal keeps getting missed. So what I'm looking for is one, that we're not missing the goal, but right now it's like we're missing the goal with no end in sight. So again, it's about constitutional policing practices, making sure that everyone stays in their lane relative to that, so that we can get to an end, so that we can get to our own way, meaning substantial completion, so that we can monitor ourselves. And I know for a fact that the New Orleans Police Department has done an extraordinary job over a decade plus now in this consent decree, millions of dollars being spent by the city of New Orleans. And I think that on yesterday, it was a step in the right direction, giving and breathing life, I would say, of objectivity back into this, not subjectivity. And I've always wrestled with the fact that I really don't believe that we've been given unbiased monitoring. I believe that it's been biased. And so I'm looking for, again, objectivity and a focus on the consent decree, which speaks to constitutional policing practices within the New Orleans Police Department.
A second question, if you don't mind. Do you question any of the sheriff's spending during carnival season?
During carnival season, I don't really know all of the ins and outs relative to the sheriff and those spent and the way money was spent. I really don't know all the details, I would say. What I do know is that the city of New Orleans, we went the extra mile to ensure that we had adequate police and law enforcement, a law enforcement presence in the city of New Orleans so that we can hold a carnival, and we did a great job.
Foxy?
Last week at the end of the press conference, right before we took questions, you mentioned that you were trying to work with some of the local convenience stores about removing some of the merch that seemed to be glorifying violence in the community. I was wondering if you might go into in-depth as to what steps are being taken. Are there shops being targeted? What are your plans? How can you even try that? It seems like there might be a freedom of speech issue there, but.
Well, no, actually it's just about working with people, bringing people together, and in this particular matter, it's bringing convenience store owners together so that we can have a dialogue, and that's really what it's been. I picked up the phone And I called one of the owners, and I said, come on, man, we can't have this in our city. Look at what we're trying to do here. And it was just that easy, meaning code enforcement took a visit along with, I know Howie took a visit, along with Tyrell Morris as well as chair of the Violence Reduction Task Force, Violent Crime Reduction Task Force. They took that visit and actually, you know, helped the owners pack, what do you call, what is boxes? Because they sent me boxes of where hats were in the boxes, shirts were in the boxes, so they actually took this merchandise from the shelves, packed it away. And all that it really took was one, us observing, one, that this was something happening, and us picking up a phone, also making a site visit. And what we also learned, and this is what I know as well, many of the owners, they're a part of their own community, if you will. And so just, and they were, you know, adamant, I would say, of bringing them all together. And it was their idea. You know, well, let me call so-and-so. We can all come together because they want to do the right thing. And it was in that spirit. And we're going to keep that dialogue going, keep that collaborative spirit going. Because what I have learned, you know, what you can bring people along when you demonstrate that we can do the right thing and, you know, have some courage to take that stand, and everything works out well.
Great. Do you have a question? WWL, do you have a question?
I have two, as a matter of fact, if I could. Mayor, real quick on the Gordon Plaza, you know, it's been a long process to get to the point, but yesterday was a real breakthrough with the settlement offer being distributed to property owners. What's your reaction to that?
Well, my reaction is that, you know, this is the furthest the Gordon Plaza community has ever gotten over decades. And it is my administration that made this possible. From identifying the project that was approved at the federal level that would allow the city to advance buyouts. So it was a win. It's been a win-win-win, I would say. Being able to right a wrong or an injustice that our residents felt and lived through, but also having the courage, I would say, to push and advocate for themselves, but also my administration and my team having the courage to yet again pick up this can and doing what was necessary to develop a project to get us to this point right now. So extending those offer letters, this is a great time. So it's exciting. I know that we had residents outside of the law department on yesterday. We have residents picking up letters today. They have until noon to do so. Anyone that hasn't picked up their letter as of 12 noon today will be mailed their letters immediately, meaning they will not be held. They will go into the mail today. Once they receive their letter, their offer letter, and they do accept, you know, then it's like a 2 to 3 week process for them to therefore get their check. This is the best, you know, the signature, I tell you, given the soft seconds and then also these Gordon Plaza offers, it's just the best thing that I've been able to sign. But it's been a long road, no doubt about it, but it's been a short road relative to my administration bringing a close to this matter that has been present for over 5 different mayors. You know, so it's a good time. We also, I'll also say that residents have 45 days up until receiving their offer letter to actually accept. And of course, once they accept, it will then trigger their payment. But it's a good time. I'm excited. I'm happy for the residents. You know, 67 homes and families.
Thank you for that answer. On the second question, you mentioned blight eradication, but one of the very few public actions by the Violent Crime Prevention Task Force was going to be the demolition of the car wash on Earhart that got halted. That seemed to be a setback. What is the plan going forward, and what is the task force doing? The one thing that it set out to do, demolish the car wash. Everybody was out there as a big press event, and it ultimately got halted.
Sure. So first off, it's not the one thing the task force has been doing. That's not fair, and that's not accurate.
I'm just saying that's the
Oh, but no, let me finish, So that
Maybe
is,
there's something going on behind the scenes, so please.
sure, there's not even behind the scenes. There was most recently a report and a presentation by the chairman of the task force that gave you many different examples regarding what the task force is doing, which also demonstrates that the demolition of the car wash was definitely not the one and only task. But however, we did experience a setback relative to the property owner, right, filing lawsuit and injunction, which therefore we had to stop. The same thing that happened when we moved forward with demolishing in New Orleans East, the La Quinta Inn. Okay. So while it was a temporary setback, La Quinta Inn is demolished now, and in partnership with the owners. So this is the same thing, in my opinion. Small setback, property owners do have rights. We're going to work through it. But one thing about it, the car wash has been a nuisance. We've gotten the attention of the owner, and they will be held accountable every step of the way. That's what we want. If property owners did the right thing, took care of their property, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be having this discussion at all.
This follow-up, you would think before the bulldozers come in that all of the correspondence with the property owner and last notice would have been made already, and the green light would have been on to complete that.
Sure, and so the outreach to the property owners was made. No doubt about that. This is something that we do routinely. But I will have to say, sometimes the city is called bluff. Because historically, they say, oh, well, the city's not going to do that. Oh, it's just, oh, it's not going to happen. And what we're doing, what my administration is doing, is demonstrating that we do what we say. And some things may take time, but we stay focused on the end goal, and we get results. This is just one example of that. Property owners have rights, but again, if a property owner would just maintain the conditions of their properties as they're supposed to do, and ensuring that they're not nuisance, and or having an issue with violent crime in our city, then we wouldn't be having this discussion. It would be a better city and overall a better quality of life. But sometimes, you have to use a stick. When you try to use a carrot, you have to do both.
The applicant and then WGNO.
Yeah, Mayor, you started off this press conference by listing off some positive crime statistics. Last week at that Violent Crime Reduction Task Force, Councilmember J.P. Morrell called into question those statistics. Mm-hmm. He said that the increasing response times may be driving down crime reporting. Do you have any response to that?
Well, what I will say is that information is inaccurate. It's been proven to be inaccurate. And unfortunately, those false truths find themselves in a public realm on a dais in the city council chambers. That's what I have to say about that.
What is the false truth? Are you saying that
the
response
false
times
truth,
are not
the data that was presented was inaccurate. We will be able to present you with the data that you're asking, and data coming from the New Orleans Police Department is the most accurate data relative to crime trends in the city of New Orleans. False truths from the dais are a disservice to the residents of the city of New Orleans.
WGNO.
Hey, man. One of the questions that I've always had regarding the consent decree is we didn't get there because we had a great police department. And in fact, the unconstitutional practices of our police department affected a significant number of residents, certainly a lot of people that look like you and me. Going forward, if in fact we're able to get to a point to get out of this, how do we ensure residents that our police department will remain a constitutional police department? There are voices that support the consent decree in different online platforms and things of that nature that recall the history of our department. And therefore, that's my first question to you, is how do we ensure that our department remains the department we want it to be, to ensure our safety, but also a fairness?
Sure. So, historically, unfortunate incidents within the department, the New Orleans Police Department, did warrant us getting into a consent decree as presented at the time by the administration. It was welcomed, it was asked, invited in. And at that time, therefore then signed into action, City of New Orleans Department of Justice. Over the past 10 years plus, reform efforts have been put in place. And those reform efforts have been put in place by the men and women who currently serve within the New Orleans Police Department. So they are responsible for the reforms. They are responsible for turning our department around. They're responsible for New Orleans now being a model of constitutional policing practices in the United States of America. They're responsible for that. And so we are not the department of the past. And the department now is the department of the future. That's training, again, in any department in this country. Now, when you talk about being able to maintain and sustain the reforms and the growth, that speaks to the training and the leadership within our department that I know that we have. They demonstrate it day in and day out. It also speaks to this community voting overwhelmingly to approve or to bring in or create an independent police monitor. The whole purpose of having an independent police monitor was to ensure that we had the necessary foundation to sustain any reforms. But that's something that we have right now. Now, my focus there is making sure and leaning very heavily on the Ethics Review Board with the leadership there to ensure that the independent police monitor stays in their lane, that they really do formulate a strategy and a focus on measurement and accountability. And this is something that this city has, but many other cities across this country do not have an independent police monitor. So we have the tools and the resources in place to ensure that we stay on the right path in terms of sustained reforms and continue to be that model police department relative to constitutional policing practices. And so that's something that I'm proud of. But right now, I want to make sure everyone is in their lane. Have the judge focus on constitutional policing practices and the monitor. But I'm at the point now that they've been monitoring for a long time, but being very subjective. And I'm not convinced that they have what it takes to be objective, because it does require that. We need objectivity. We need a thorough assessment, looking at that end goal, but it seems like we've been missing the goal here, and missing the goal with no end in sight. That has to change. And from talking with both police officers that are part of our department now, those officers that have separated from our department, or law enforcement officers elsewhere that would want to come to New Orleans to serve, this consent decree is an impediment. It is a burden. And so that is why I know for a fact we've done our reforms, we are at substantial completion, we have the tools and resources in place to sustain them, and now is the time.
The Attorney General has come out in support of this consent decree also being rescinded. What is your response to Attorney General Landry's statements there?
Well, I'm very I'm thankful for the focus, as well as the real understanding about the progress that the New Orleans Police Department has made, and the fact that our department is a model for constitutional policing in this country. And so what this means to me is that the Attorney General understands that and has the courage to stand with the City of New Orleans and the New Orleans Police Department in this matter.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mayor, I apologize for interrupting.